Ah! Greetings, brethren, Cloaking Donkey with the last of the Donkey Award videos for 2017. And this time, of course, with the top 10 free-to-play multiplayer battle/lobby/arena games. A rather awkward title, to be sure. But I didn't know what else to call it, because quite honestly, there isn't really a specific genre for this. Sure, you can call all of these games MMOs, but that really only dilutes the term MMO. I can tell you, however, that this list does not include any Dota-like games. So if you're looking for Dota 2, or League of Legends, or Heroes of the Storm, they're not going to be on this list, because they're not really what I'm talking about with this category, which is games along the line of War Thunder, which is also not on this list because I'd rather eat shards of glass than promote a Gaijin game. With that being said, let's talk about number 10 on the list, the game in the background, the ever so venerable Team Fortress 2. Hell yes, Team Fortress 2, one of the oldest team-based shooter games in the shooter genre, full stop, but also pretty much the granddaddy of the emergent hero shooter genre. You know, games such as Battleborn and Overwatch heavily borrow from what Team Fortress 2 established years ago. And of course there's nothing wrong with iteration, but there is definitely something to be said about this game, clearly the best game to come out of the Source engine.
Once upon a time, Team Fortress 2 was just a humble box price multiplayer shooter.
But then over the years it changed quite dramatically and is now definitely worthy of the title of free-to-play multiplayer lobby battle arena type game. Valve switched the game to free-to-play, added all sorts of free-to-play-ish cash shoppy type content, and added various game modes such as a cooperative mode over the years. Team Fortress 2 may be old and you can definitely see it at some places in the graphics, but I do think the graphics hold up a lot better than some of the more realistic games from that time. And despite its age, this game is still incredibly solid. The controls are crisp and the gameplay is as solid as ever. And coming in at number 9, we have Mechwarrior Online. Mechwarrior Online definitely came in wave 2 of the online multiplayer battle games, and as such tried to go some different routes, as in it abandoned the tier system of vehicles and just let you get whatever vehicle you want straight away. This makes it a little bit better for newer players because you can get into the game, play one of the trial mechs, which have a rotation sort of setup, and then after a pretty reasonable amount of time, I'd say between 20 to 50 battles, you will be able to afford your first own battle mech. And if you put a few battles on top, you can even get specifically the one that you want. You don't have to wait a ton of time and go through all of these different battle mech tiers that you don't really want to play. If you want to go for an Atlas, you can go for an Atlas straight away. It'll take you a few more battles in the trial mech to get the necessary funds for an Atlas, but you can go for an Atlas straight away, and there is definitely something to be said for setting the game up like this. Now at its core, Mechwarrior Online is an absolutely fine shooter title. However, if you're a bit of a Mechwarrior purist, I mean let's face it, if you are, you probably have already heard about this game and made up your mind. This game errs certainly more on the shooter side than on the simulation side, so it does abandon a lot of the old Mechwarrior trappings that a lot of people loved about the series to make it more of an interesting action-y shooter. If however you're just looking for a fun mech shooter based on the Battletech franchise, Mechwarrior Online really isn't that bad. However, I will say that I'm not a particularly big fan of their business model, hence why the game is so low on the list. In recent years, they have focused a lot on bringing out new mechs and putting them into these ridiculous bundles that cost up to hundreds of euros, instead of actually sitting down and fixing some of the issues the game has in terms of balance. It would be really nice of them to stop releasing new mechs for just a little while and focusing on all the problems the game has instead. At number 8 comes Heroes vs. Generals, a lobby World War II shooter with a grand global campaign behind it. So while you really still only play lobby-style matches, they have a greater impact on a war campaign that goes on in the background that usually simulates a war in Europe scenario for World War II. At the end of each war period, one of the sides wins and gains a whole bunch of bonuses, and the other side hangs their heads in shame. Then a new war begins, you choose your side, and then you play that side until the war ends, at which point you can choose another side or the same side again. All your progress is of course saved, so if you play one war as the Germans, and then the next war you play as the Americans, and then return back to the Germans for the third campaign, all of your progress with the Germans will still be there. And there is a lot of progress to be had, because characters can not only be leveled up, but you can also unlock various weapons and vehicles, choose different classes for your character. Everybody starts out as a rifleman, but you can become a tank crewman, a fighter pilot, a paratrooper, or a sniper. There is a lot of progression in Heroes and Generals, and sometimes that can be a little bit tedious. However, if nothing else, Heroes and Generals certainly is the premier wartime bicycle simulator. At number 7, a game that has largely flown under my radar by the name of Tiger Knight Empire War. This is a Chinese developed lobby battle game, and I know a lot of people are gonna say, oh my god, not another Chinese game. Because let's face it, a lot of Chinese games are knockoffs and are just not very good. However, this particular game I actually think is pretty great and has a lot of potential. If you want a quick rundown on what this game is, think of Mount & Blade Warband multiplayer matches teamed up with World of Tanks account progression. An incredibly strange combination that works surprisingly well. The first game what you can play when you create your account is the one you can see in the background. They're called Commander Battles, and it's a 5v5 setup where each player has a group of soldiers that they command. And you choose the type of soldiers, and they exist in a tier system. So you have all sorts of spear infantry, shield infantry, archers, mounted archers, heavy cavalry, and pike infantry. And you choose this regiment, you can equip them, you can take their equipment and use it to equip your character that you actually play. And there's even 3 more game types that I haven't explored. To me, this game looks absolutely fantastic, and I'm gonna have to put a lot more time into this in 2017, because, well, so far I really haven't interacted with this game at all, and I feel that it certainly seems good enough to at least give it a go. And so far from what I've seen, the business model seems absolutely fair. I couldn't find a single shred of being able to buy power, except for healing potions that resurrect characters, but they can only be used in PvE battles, so it doesn't really matter from a competitive standpoint in PvP. For PvP there really is nothing apart from a VIP membership subscription kind of deal, and even that is pretty generous as it costs about €7 to subscribe for 30 days. To be honest, in the beginning I was just looking for a number 10 on this list because I was so desperate not to put a Gaijin game on here. And then Tiger Knight surprised me so much that I even bumped it up a couple of steps and might bump it up more in the future depending on how my tests go. At number 6 we have World of Warships. Yes, World of Warships. A game that I certainly used to cover on this channel, but that I'm not incredibly fond of anymore. If you would like to know why that is, I actually made a video back when I stopped covering World of Warships explaining exactly what I think is wrong with the game and what I want to see them fix before I even consider coming back. And sadly, a lot of the things on that list are still very much valid even 1.5 years after I made this video. So that should say something about the pace of their development. They seem very focused on adding new ships instead of fixing any of the problems the game has, kind of like Mechwarrior Online. World of Warships is also a vehicle lobby shooter, using all sorts of warships from around the turn of the century to the end and slightly after World War II. The cool thing, just like with all these vehicle shooters, is of course how many different ships there are to choose from. There are so many different types. You have your battleships, your cruisers, your destroyers, and your aircraft carriers, but even within these classes there are significant differences based on the different nations, and even some differences within the nations within the types. So there is a lot of variety in gameplay to be had. Like a lot of the wargaming titles, however, the progression in this game is incredible. So if you're not willing to put in a bunch of money, you're going to have to put in a lot of time to get through the tier system to get to the highest tiers. On the other hand, I will say that unlike some other titles in this genre, you can have a lot of fun with World of Warships at the lower tiers as well. Personally, my favorite tier in World of Warships when I played it was Tier 4 and Tier 5. I thought they were the most fun because they were a lot more fast-paced than the later tiers, which are a lot slower. At number 5 we have a game that's still pretty new, and that is Atlas Reactor. And Atlas Reactor is not just pretty new, it is also probably the most different game on this list. A lot of the games on this list are shooters or action games or anything in between, but this one is a turn-based, team-based strategy game. It is a lobby game as well, so you pick yourself one of the various hero characters that are available, hit that quick match button, and then find yourself in a 4v4 game. The objective in the standard game type is to get 5 kills against the enemy team, but there are, I think, also some other game types that I don't have access to yet, because I still haven't invested that much time into the game. And according to their website, they're also working on some more game types for the future. Now the cool thing about this game is that even though it is a turn-based strategy game, it is still pretty fast-paced, because the turns don't happen in sequence. So it's not, I take a turn, then the other teammate takes a turn, and the next teammate takes a turn, and so on and so forth. No, all the turns happen simultaneously, and you only get about 20 seconds to decide what it is you want to do in your turn. You get one action, and then a movement. And once everybody has locked their moves in, they all happen in an initiative-based sequence. And the cool thing about this is you can see what your friends are doing, you can see where they're walking and what actions they are using and where they are using their actions, etc. But you cannot see what the enemy is doing. So you really have to predict where the enemy is going to go, what skills the enemy might be using, what skills they have on cooldown because they just use them and, they cool down for a few turns. And so that entire thing creates such an interesting tactical perspective to this game. Because not only do you have to figure out what is the best to use out of your arsenal and where you want to move in relation to where your teammates are moving, but you also have to process what the enemy is likely to do. And you really only have about 20 seconds to do this. So it is actually quite hectic for being a turn-based game. It is probably the most hectic turn-based game I've ever played. But both from a turn-based strategy kind of view and from an action point of view, I think this game strikes a really, really nice balance. And on the other hand, their business model is a little bit punitive. It is very much in line with a lot of the Dota-like games, so you have to buy characters or you have to earn them through a long unlocking process of playing free characters over and over. And then all of their costumes you have to buy as well and all that sort of stuff, but that's fine, that's just cosmetics. It's just, in my opinion, just like with Heroes of the Storm, unlocking each of the characters is just a little bit too pricey. At number 4 comes one of my personal favorites and a criminally underestimated game, Dirty Bomb. Dirty Bomb is a very, very crisp and refined shooter. And what I like so much about it is that it isn't so much in the vein of the modern military shooters that have dominated the genre for the last 10 to 15 years. But instead is a little bit more in the vein of Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, which means it is a little bit more fast-paced and iron sights don't matter as much as they would in a modern military shooter. You can shoot from the hip much more easily, there is not as much spray, so aiming is much more important. And there's also a lot of single-shot weapons that are really powerful instead of just the spray and pray of Call of Duty. And on top of that, they paired it with a sort of hero shooter system. The heroes aren't quite as refined as they would be in Overwatch or Battleborn. They don't have a ton of abilities, but each hero is very much unique and works in different ways. For example, there is a couple of medic type characters, but only the character I play in the background has this cool railgun that one snipes people at long range, like a railgun should, but can also revive teammates at range. And as she says very succinctly, it's a rifle. It revives people. Think of it as a revival. And she pays for this by not being so good at healing people directly. And other healers might be better at doing that. And so with very little differences in kit, they still manage to make the characters very unique. And they all have their individual voice acting, which makes them really characterful and cool. Another pro is certainly also that there are quite a few players. The peak concurrency on Steam is usually around 7,000 to 10,000 people, which for an indie title like this is actually pretty impressive. Sure, it doesn't match the player numbers of Overwatch, but let's face it, not a lot of things do. It must be said that the business model for this game isn't amazing. Just as you would in a Dota-like game or an Atlas Reactor, you have to unlock each character separately by spending money. And then on top of that, they all have different loadout cards. Now, I will say that you can buy every weapon combination in the game. That is not a problem. You can get those from the store and they're for in-game currency. You don't have to buy them with money. And that's all fine, I'm totally cool with that. However, there is a bit of a problem because the loadouts are always set and include a set of perks. And all of the stuff in this loadout is usually randomized when you receive them through the booster pack system. The booster pack system is sadly the thing that lets this game down a little bit. You get a random card out of that set, and it could be for any of the characters in the game, even ones you don't own, and then it is a completely random setup, and it might have the weapons you like, but it might have traits that aren't particularly good or that you don't prefer. It's really difficult to get specifically the weapons and all the 3 traits that you really want. So yeah, that's not the greatest, but apart from that, Dirty Bomb really is a fantastic shooter with a great core gameplay, and I absolutely advise you to give it a go. At number 3 we have World of Tanks. Yes, World of Tanks. It had to be on this list, of course it did. I don't necessarily like having to put it on the list, but the genre is just kind of letting me down on this one. Nobody seems to be able to make a game that's better than World of Tanks, that keeps people's attention, and that they can also then advertise properly. I would personally say that Armored Warfare is a better game than World of Tanks, but somehow people just don't like playing it that much. And to be fair, I lost interest in it as well after a while. It's a huge shame, but what are you gonna do? That's just how it goes. And World of Tanks, on the other hand, is still going insanely strong. It is still a growing game, if you can believe it. And despite its many, many flaws, people just can't seem to stop playing this game. Despite all of the feelings of hatred and spite that are being thrown at it from so many sides, people just can't stop playing this game. And I'm not even going to exempt myself in this, because I also constantly return to World of Tanks. There is just something about this World War II lobby shooter, probably one of the first sort of tier progression-based lobby shooters out there, that just keeps dragging people back in. Usually I come back to the game, play it a couple of weeks, and then I'm like, okay, artillery still sucks. But they do have stuff planned for artillery, and they do have some other changes planned as well. Currently it's just not worth number 1, but it could be again. And at number 2 we have my current favorite in this genre, Paladins. This game is awesome. I played this game when it first went into alpha, mostly because Overwatch wasn't out yet, and I was wondering if this was similar enough to tide me over to Overwatch, but what I found was a game that I ended up liking much better than Overwatch. Because where Overwatch really is just a shooter, this game is certainly a hero shooter like Overwatch, but it has taken it a little bit more into the MOBA/Dota-like corner of the genre. It is still definitely a shooter, but with all of the abilities, the cards, and the items you can buy during the matches, it just is closer to that Dota experience than Overwatch. In Paladins, you also pick a character at the beginning of a match, and then you play that character for the entire match. And while that is certainly just a personal thing, it is something I really like. I don't like that part about Overwatch, that you constantly have to change characters to counter what the enemy team is doing, and to do this, and oh, this character sucks in this situation and gets hard countered by that character. I just hate that. I think it's much more interesting when all the characters can compete against each other in some way, but have interesting ways of doing it and have quirks, like it is in Paladins. On top of that, I simply feel that the team play in Paladins is stronger than it is in Overwatch. And then in building a card setup for your character and in buying various specific items during the match, you can really tailor yourself to the situation and to how you like to play your character. And that is just something that Overwatch, for example, does not offer. Now, the one place where Paladins is pretty weak is the sound design, but it is still technically open beta, so that might all change until that inevitable release date. And then finally at number 1, the big one, the one that has been around for so many years and has brought so many people so much loot, Warframe. Now, Warframe is a shooter and a little bit of an action game in there as well, but it is slightly different from the other shooters on this list in that it is more of a looter shooter. So you basically shoot a lot of NPCs to get loot out of it. For the most part, Warframe is a cooperative game. There are also PvP modes that you can play. To be honest, I have never played them personally, because I'm not a big fan of looter shooters myself, but Warframe certainly is a damn good looter shooter. For one, it has beautiful graphic and sound design for a free-to-play game. I mean, are you kidding me? Just look at how beautiful this game looks. You have to pay nothing at all for this game and can get easily dozens of hours of fun out of it with not investing anything at all. And it looks this good? These are premium game quality visuals and sound effects. What I have played of Warframe was also really nice narrative-based missions, which is of course a lot better than, for example, Skyforge, which is rather lackluster in the narrative department by comparison. To start out, you get a choice of 3 different Warframes, which is the sort of classes in this game, and I'm being told there's a lot of different Warframes in this game. And after you pick your Warframe, you are led through various story missions, which act as the tutorial and then basically are thrown into the real game, where you then start looting to get more Warframes and to get more weapons and to unlock stuff and to level up and all those good things people love about their looter shooters. The business model for this game is also certainly pretty fair, as most of what you can get is really just time skipping mechanics and cosmetics. And let's be honest, when it comes to free-to-play business models, after the cosmetics, the next best thing is certainly the time skip mechanics, because they just don't factor into your gameplay as much. Unless, of course, the game is unreasonably elongated, which I don't think Warframe is. It didn't feel like that from what I played. Alright, and that concludes the top 10 free-to-play multiplayer battle lobby arena games list. And by completing that list, it also completes the Donkey Awards for 2017. I hope you all enjoyed these specific what's the best in every genre lists. They will, of course, return next year when we look into 2018 and see what changes. Do make sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing to my channel for more guides on various MMOs and multiplayer games and for more lists on other stuff. But until then, I've been the Cloaking Donkey, and I'll see you in another video!